Hello, my name is Olivia. I am 21 years old. Today, I want to tell you a story about my grandmother. This story is very special to me because it is about the last words she said to me before she passed away. My grandmother's name was Rose. She had soft white hair that looked like clouds. Her voice was gentle, like a lullaby. She loved flowers, especially roses. She said they reminded her of beauty and kindness. Every morning, she watered her garden and talked to her plants. She believed they could hear her. When I was little, I thought she was magical. She always seemed to know when I was sad, even if I didn't say anything. She would sit with me, hold my hand, and tell me a story to cheer me up. Her stories made me laugh, cry, and think. One of my favorite stories was about a brave little bird that learned to fly even though it was scared. She said, "The bird's wings grew strong because it kept trying." Remember that, Olivia. As I grew older, I spent less time with her. School, friends, and hobbies took up my days. But she always made time for me. "Come visit me whenever you can," she would say. "I'll always be here, waiting with a story." I didn't realize how important those words were until later. One day, I noticed she was getting weaker. Her hands trembled when she held her tea. She smiled less often, and her walks in the garden became shorter. I asked her if she was okay. She just smiled and said, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Don't you worry about me." But I did worry. Something inside me told me that she wasn't fine. Looking back, I wish I had spent more time with her. Sometimes we don't realize how precious moments are until they become memories. It was a sunny afternoon when my mom told me we were going to visit Grandma. She said Grandma wasn't feeling well and needed to rest. I felt a knot in my stomach. I didn't want to believe anything bad could happen to her. When we arrived at her house, everything felt different. The garden was quiet, and the roses looked as if they were bowing their heads. Grandma was lying in her bed, surrounded by pillows. She looked so small and fragile. But when she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Olivia," she said softly. "My little sunshine." I ran to her and hugged her carefully. She smelled like lavender, just like always. She patted my hand and said, "Tell me, how have you been?" I told her about school, my friends, and how I had started learning to play the piano. She listened with a smile, even though she looked tired. After a while, she asked me to sit beside her. "I have a story for you," she said. Her voice was faint, but her words were clear. This story was different. It was about a girl who lived in a small village. The girl loved her grandmother very much, just like I loved mine. The grandmother taught the girl about courage, kindness, and the beauty of life. One day, the grandmother became very sick. Before she closed her eyes for the last time, she told the girl, "Remember, my love never ends. It lives in your heart forever." I listened carefully, my heart heavy. I knew she was telling me this story for a reason. I held her hand tightly and whispered, "I love you, Grandma." She smiled and said, "I love you too, my sunshine." The next morning, I woke up early. I wanted to spend more time with Grandma. When I went to her room, she was sitting up, looking out the window. The sun was rising, and its golden light filled the room. She turned to me and said, "Come here, Olivia." I sat beside her, and she held my hand. Her hands were cold, but her touch was gentle. She looked into my eyes and said, "Olivia, life is a gift. It's not always easy, but it's beautiful. Promise me you will live with courage and kindness. Promise me you will chase your dreams and never give up." Tears filled my eyes. I nodded and said, "I promise, Grandma." She smiled, her eyes shining with love. Then she said something I will never forget. Remember, my love is like the roses in my garden. It will bloom in your heart, even when I'm not here. Her words felt like a hug for my soul. I didn't want to cry, but I couldn't stop the tears. She wiped them away with her frail fingers and said, "It's okay to cry, Olivia. But don't forget to smile too." Later that day, she fell asleep and didn't wake up. It was the hardest day of my life. But her last words stayed with me, like a light in the dark. They gave me strength when I felt weak and hope when I felt lost. After Grandma passed away, her house felt empty. The garden was still there, but it didn't feel the same. I missed her stories, her hugs, and her voice. Sometimes I would sit by her favorite rosebush and talk to her, just like she used to talk to her plants. One day, I found a notebook in her room. It was filled with her thoughts, stories, and little messages for me. On the first page, she had written, "To my sunshine, Olivia. Always remember, you are braver than you think and loved more than you know." Reading her words felt like she was still with me. I decided to honor her memory by living the way she wanted me to, with courage and kindness. I started helping my mom in the garden, planting new flowers and taking care of the roses. Every time a new flower bloomed, I felt like Grandma was smiling at me. At school, I shared her stories with my friends. They loved hearing about the brave little bird and the girl from the village. It made me happy to see her lessons touching other hearts too. Grandma's words taught me that love doesn't end when someone is gone. It stays with us, like a treasure we carry in our hearts. And every time I do something kind or brave, I feel like I'm keeping her spirit alive. Now, when I look back, I don't just feel sadness. I feel gratitude. My grandmother gave me the most precious gift, her love and her wisdom. Her last words, "My love is like the roses in my garden," remind me that love never fades. It grows and blossoms, even in the hardest times. I hope this story inspires you too. Remember to cherish the people you love and learn from their words. Life is a gift, just like Grandma said. And even when things seem tough, there is always beauty to be found, like the roses in a garden. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you learn English and also fills your heart with hope and love.